Alrighty. It is Sunday, December 7th, 2025, and welcome to First and Short, your first place to get short bits of college football news and analysis. I'm Aaron. I'm here with my co host, Mashfik, and we're going to do things a little bit differently today. So, I'm currently recording pre college football playoff selection. He's going to record post college football selection. I'm going to give my reaction to some of my predictions and talk about, the weekend, cover some of the smaller games. He's going to cover some of those bigger games. And he's going to also talk about the, college football playoff post selection. So he's going to be able to give insight, live reaction. It's going to be very interesting. New concept that we're doing here. Before we get started, I will say please like and subscribe. We are on, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Alrighty. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about this weekend. So, Mash and I we made six predictions on six different conference championship games. I was 4 out of 6 on the weekend. I got Virginia wrong and North Texas wrong. Mash is two out of 6. He got those games wrong, and he also got the Big Ten championship game. He picked Ohio State, and then the SEC championship. He picked Bama to win that game. So, um, you know, conference championships sometimes they're hard to tell who's going to win, who's going to lose. Um, let's jump into that first game on Friday, the Sun Belt Championship game. Shout out to my Sun Belt alumni. James Madison, they hosted Troy this weekend. They defeated them 31-14. This game pretty much went how we thought it would. Um, I'm just surprised it took so long for JMU to put Troy away. I got to give credit to the Troy offense, and Goose Crowder finding a way to score, putting up 14 in the first half to only be down by 3. The X factor, that allowed James Madison to pull away, however, was the duo Wayne Knight and Alonzo Barnett III. We mentioned earlier in the preview that they would probably be the ones to get it done. I just didn't expect them to be this dominant on the ground. They rushed for almost 300 yards total, and the MVP, in my opinion, for this game is going to have to be Wayne Knight. He rushed for 212 yards, and his 73-yard, touchdown in the first half was the one that started the touchdown frenzy for the Dukes. They finished the job. They got it done this weekend, and now they're going to wait for the committee to most likely make their decision of where they would place him in the college football playoffs. So shout out to James Madison. Also on Friday, we saw Tulane take down North Texas 34-21. And wow, we both got this one wrong. I thought North Texas's offense was just going to come out there and be dominant, but this Tulane defense really came to play. They forced 5 turnovers in this game, and they took advantage of it when they did. They forced Drew Messamaker to throw 3 interceptions, and I think that was the difference in this game. Plain and simple, you can't win if you're going to turn the ball over as much as they did. Tulane, they controlled the game by keeping the ball on the ground and, having the ball majority of the game. They get the job done. They punch their tickets to the college football playoffs, and it should be interesting to see if they can make some noise. Just know, Florida, they're getting a good coach in John Summerall. It'll be fun to see him in the SEC next year. Moving on to Saturday, we saw Texas Tech playing at noon in the Big 12 championship against BYU in Jerry World. This game pretty much yielded the same result as it did for these teams earlier in the year. The difference for me in this one that I saw was, BYU, they were just not able to keep the ball off the ground. They would have made a better case for themselves for the committee if they made this game a close one, but the 2 interceptions and the 2 fumbles were key in flipping momentum and allowing Baron Morton and his team to capitalize off of it. I really have to give credit to Coy Eakin in this game. He made some great catches, and he had a really, really good yards after catch play and yards after contact play to score late in the game and pretty much put the nail in the coffin. Shout out to Mash and his dark horse for pretty much clinching their bye into the college football playoffs. I'm really excited to see how far this explosive team will go. They don't get as much credit as they deserve, but they're a really, really good offense and a great defense as well. Mash is going to talk more about the ACC Championship Conference game. He's also going to deep dive into the SEC Championship game. One question that I have for him in that 28-7 Georgia victory is, what did UGA really do differently this game? I mean, of course we saw, the teams are both banged up, they're pretty injured, but I mean the game plan was different. What did you see, Mash? The next question I have is, okay, what's wrong with Alabama's offense? I mean, in the middle of the season, we felt like they were pretty much the best team in the college football. FBS felt like they were going to be the ones to pretty much secure the SEC, be a 1 or 2 or 3 seed, and now it seems like they're a team that can barely score more than 14 points a game. What's going on? What do you see? Mash is also going to deep dive the Big Ten championship game. With the way that turned out, my question for you, Mash, is, are you surprised to see Indiana as the new number one in this conference? I think it was their first Big Ten championship since the 1960s. So that's just a crazy turnaround. You got to give credit to Kurt Signetti. He's really turned this team into a powerhouse. Lastly, since I'm recording, I think it's T minus 40 minutes until the college football final CFP selection takes place. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to foot stomp the point no matter how the committee selects it today. There's going to be uproar. There's going to be fan bases that are mad. They are going to, potentially screw somebody up who thought they had a clear shot into this playoffs. You would think a 12-team playoff would just make things so much easier compared to the 14 playoff, but you just add in more variables of, okay, you have this 10-2 team, you have this 10-2 team, you have this 9-3 team. Um, my prediction that I'm about to announce, it's pre-selection. Mash is going to come in and give reactions on the post-selection, and he's going to see how I did. I have a lot of thoughts on who should be in, but that's not the same as how the committee is going to select who's in. Number one for me, Alabama and BYU, they technically sit in the same seat, if you ask me. They had a conference championship games. They came in, pretty much atop of their conference, but they lost those championship games pretty badly, and they were already on the college football playoff bubble. In my opinion, if you let one in, you should let the other in. And the same goes if you leave one out. With that being said, if they were left out, I think you should probably include, Miami and Notre Dame in there. And then you have Duke, who just caused absolute chaos this weekend. Manny Diaz, he tried to make his case as to why they should get in over JMU this weekend. I really don't think he sold anyone, but I mean, the chances of them getting in are not zero. So, I mean, I guess you can't count them out. The last thing that I think the committee should consider is, where this Ohio State team is going to fall since they lost a close conference championship game. Do they still get a bye? Are they number 3 or number 4 of the rankings? Right or wrong, here's how I think the committee will place these 12 playoff teams they're going to have. So, at number 1, I think it's obvious you're going to have Indiana there. They finished their season undefeated and they won the conference championship. At 2, I have UGA at number 2. The SEC and my opinion, and a little bit of my bias, it's probably the toughest conference to play in. They found a way to finish their season 12-1, and they defeated a tough Alabama Crimson Tide team. At number 3, I don't think Ohio State slips far. I think they're going to sit there, even with the conference championship loss. And then at 4, I think you'll see Texas Tech. They get their bye. They'll be waiting to see who's going to come out of the one of the first round matchups. Then right behind them at 5, I got Oregon. At 6, I have Texas A&M jumping in front of Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to be there at 7. Then you got Oklahoma at 8. And then this is where it gets interesting for me and my prediction. I think the committee is going to put Notre Dame at 9, Tulane at 10, and I think they just can't leave Alabama out because the whole thing was, oh, we're not gonna punish teams for playing an extra game. They made it to the conference championship for a reason. Why should we punish them when we have X amount of teams sitting out this week, not having to worry about a game to play or a game to win? So I have them making it in. I just have, for some reason, the committee putting Tulane above them. And then lastly, in that 12th spot, I have James Madison. I think they're going to get in, of course, because they're higher ranked than Duke, but they will get that last seeding and that last spot. With that being said, my first out is going to be Miami at 13. Right or wrong, that's just how I see the committee most likely placing them. And then the team out after them is probably going to be BYU. Again, I mentioned, I think they have the same case, pretty much the same scenario as Alabama, but they're just not going to get the same respect because they're not an ACC team. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. Mash, please let me know if how many I got right, how many I got wrong.
Aaron, appreciate you starting us off. Sorry I'm late here. I actually just got back from Florida. I ran a little marathon or whatever, right? So anyway, just got back. But yeah, we decided to, since our schedules were a little different today, we decided to do this in a little two-part little thing where he gives a pre show and I give a post show. Depending on how the CFP kind of bracket looks. So, Aaron, I just want to say good job, man. Good job on the picks. Obviously, you had some flyers there, but you got how many? You got 4 out of 6 right. I only got 2 out of 6. Your predictions for the CFP bracket were pretty good. So the bracket actually goes number 1 Indiana, number 2 Ohio State, number 3 Georgia, number 4 Texas Tech, number 5 Oregon, number 6 Ole Miss, number 7 Texas A&M, number 8 Oklahoma, number 9 Alabama, number 10 Miami, 11 Tulane, 12 JMU. In that first round, we'll have JMU and Oregon at Oregon, Alabama at Oklahoma. That'll be a rematch. Number 11 Tulane at Ole Miss, and then number 10 Miami at Texas A&M. So that is the bracket for the first round and moving forward for the playoff. I think the biggest surprise, I guess, was leaving Notre Dame out. So Notre Dame did not make it, and in this situation, Miami was able to get in instead of Notre Dame, which that makes sense to me, right? Like Miami beat Notre Dame in a head-to-head, and then they had similar kind of schedules or whatever, so it makes sense that the head-to-head team would get in. But in general, it really feels like conference championship weekend has made this CFP selection process very murky. I feel like it was a lot cleaner and easier to understand when we only had 4 and didn't have all these auto bids, auto qualifiers, for different conference different conference champions, and then like for G5 teams, group of 5 teams. So I'm not going to pretend to understand the thought process behind forcing Notre Dame out, but letting Tulane and James Madison in. One or the other, I understand. Both at the expense of Notre Dame, I don't get it. It's hard to say that Notre Dame didn't earn their way in when the 2 opponents that they lost to are in the CFP, and clearly Notre Dame has a better resume than Tulane and JMU put together. So what's really sad about that situation is that Marcus Freeman and his team, they've elected that Notre Dame will not play in a bowl game, and so their season is just done. Like that's it. 12 games, 12 and out. So their season is done, and we won't get to see kind of what the next year will look like. That part I found a little dorky. Like I don't know. I don't even know what the ramifications of that is. I know if a team that's in a conference decides not to play in a bowl game, they get fined by their conference because that is a revenue generating opportunity, and for them to not go, I understand the punishments for that. But with Notre Dame being independent, I don't really know how that goes. But it is what it is. That's the choice that they decided to make. But, what kind of precedent does this set in the future? Every fringe team will just not play just to try and make a point. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we had it better with the 4-team playoff. I don't think we've seen that before. Another thought on the CFP's bracket. So Georgia and Alabama, they are in the exact same place as they were before the SEC championship game. So I think there was some thought behind that to leave them there, because that gives it's fair, and it also means that they won't see each other again unless they both make it to the Natty game. So that at least reduces one rematch. Ohio State and Indiana, they swap places. I think it's worth playing the Big Ten Conference Championship game. I can already hear some people screaming, is it worth playing the extra game? Which, in my opinion, I think it is. I think winners want to win, competitors want to compete, and people want to, when they're at a high level like this, they want to win championships and hang more banners. So I think it's worth playing an extra game, but I know some people are gonna, have a problem with that if it's only gonna determine, seeding and things of that nature. So in any case, that is the bracket. Let's get into, I know, Aaron, thank you very much for covering a few of the conference games. Let me cover a few more that is on my plate. So Big Ten, Indiana wins the Big Ten, like for the first time since, what did they say, 1960 something. So Indiana 13, Ohio State 10. Was this a surprise? I don't know. You tell me. Tell me in the comments if you feel like you were surprised. I'm sure some people feel like they knew it, that this was going to happen. Indiana was only one spot under Ohio State in the rankings, and they only won by 3. But this did feel like a huge upset, right? I don't think there's any questions left. This Indiana team is, for real. They've got it. They've got it on offense. They've got it on defense. And look, this is no knock to Ohio State. They've got some small stuff to figure out, right? On that offensive line, for example, they were letting, I was talking to an Ohio State friend of mine, and we both agreed they were just letting the linebackers for Indiana just live in the backfield. And we'll talk a little bit more about those stats in a little bit. But you got to fix stuff like that. You got to make the makeable kicks, through the uprights. Still a very good team in Ohio State that can, win it all. But right now, Indiana is the Big Ten champion, and they've got the number 1 CFP spot. So to answer Aaron's question, he asked me, was I surprised that Indiana got number 1? No, not surprised at all. They, in retrospect, right? No, not surprised. I did pick Ohio State to win, but I'm not surprised at the result. They show up, this Indiana team, this Hoosiers team, they show up, they play their opponents, and they win. Any Power 4 team has the opportunity to do that, to win all their games and earn the number 1 spot. There is nothing precluding Indiana from doing that, from earning the number 1 spot if they win all their games. I mean, Kurt Cignetti, he has this team locked in and ready to face whoever. If you're able to do that, you deserve the number 1 spot. But this Indiana team, led by Fernando Mendoza, in case you didn't, hear Gus Johnson yell it out once or twice, he made some big time throws yesterday, man. He only passed 23 times, kind of low, but he connected on 15 of them. That's 65%, very decent, for 222 yards. 2 of his passes really stood out to me. After being down 10-6, their first drive in the second half, Mendoza, he led this, massive 88-yard drive to start that second half for them. It was capped off by a perfectly placed ball to Surratt in the corner of the end zone. And it really, I mean, the poise and the understanding of the game plan you have to have in order to make a go-ahead touchdown early in the third quarter. It just showed, it was the epitome of that to me. And really, that was the last time both of these teams scored. The final score was 13-10. So he's got guts. He's got the precision. Some of his big passes were dropped earlier. I mean, he could have had a lot more big time throws if his receivers could have caught it, or if they recovered less, whatever else. But the second pass that really stuck out to me, it was a 33-yard completion to Charlie Becker. It was on a 3rd and 5 near the end of the game. I think, under 3 minutes left. I mean, it was a dagger of all daggers. Ohio State was expecting a run to force, like a punt. But Mendoza threw a rope really down the sideline to Becker for that 33-yard gain, and it gave Indiana obviously a new set of downs with 33 yards, but it forced Ohio State to burn their last timeout, and then Indiana was able to milk the clock some more down to 147. But that throw really secured that Big Ten championship for them. And I don't know, this team just it knows. In the preview, I mentioned that this team could get into a shootout with anybody. They can score the points if needed. They're a very high scoring team, but for them to win a game 13-10 against a team like Ohio State that scores at will, they got Jeremiah Smith, they got Cornell Tate, first down merchant. For them to be able to do that was defensively, I mean, is very impressive. And we've talked highly about Indiana's defense, previewing this game. They held Ohio State to 0 points in that second half. I'm not sure when's the last time I've seen that. I could go back in history and take a look, but I'm not 100% sure. Indiana's defensive line, they had 5 sacks yesterday, where Ohio State's offensive line had only given up 6 all season. So that goes back to some of the Ohio State offensive line issues that I was talking about earlier. This obviously forced Sayin into bad reads throughout the game, but it even affected him early, with that interception that he threw on their opening drive. So credit to Indiana, credit to Kurt Cignetti. They deserve it. They won the game. They earned it. But how much of this was on the Ohio State team? Again, Indiana earned it, but Ohio State, they crossed the 50-yard line 5 times after halftime, and they came away with 0 points. We talked about the missed field goals, but you gotta score a little bit more than that if you're gonna be on your opponent's side of the field. Their 2 most devastating failures, they got stuffed on 4th and 1 with the QB sneak deep in the red zone, and that was a turnover on downs. And then obviously the final dagger was the 27-yard field goal attempt by the kicker named Fielding, and that would have tied the game. But they gave Indiana the win as much as the Hoosiers earned it. So with this, Indiana secures the number 1 seed in the CFP and their first AP number 1 ranking ever. So, like I mentioned, they kind of flip-flopped the 1 and 2 seeding for the CFP, but shout out to Indiana. Been a great story to cover so far this season. Moving on to the SEC championship game played in Atlanta yesterday. UGA 28, Alabama 7. 2 teams on totally different paths, right? That's how we described this rematch since when we were previewing it. But basically 2 teams on 2 different paths since the first time they played in Athens earlier this season. This was not the same UGA defense as the first time, and this was not the same Ty Simpson as the first time. The main thing that stuck out to me, to answer Aaron's question about what's wrong with Alabama's offense, Alabama has been able to get by with the lackluster running game this whole season because of how good Ty Simpson had been. He's been really good at getting the ball on some middle of the field stuff to Isaiah Horton and Jeremy Bernard. But with their number 1 option out at running back, it was a big yikes for me, for Alabama. -3, -3, under 0 rushing yards in the SEC championship game for Alabama, for the Alabama Crimson Tide. When you can't run the ball, you can't control the game, you can't control the clock, you can't dictate what you want your opponents to do when you can't run the ball. You can't do those things when you're not able to have one phase of your offense. And that showed with the time of possession, really. 36 minutes to 23 minutes. UGA had the ball almost an entire quarter longer than Alabama did. And the fact that Alabama has had trouble running the ball, it really reared its ugly head here for Alabama. They could have went they could have told Glenn Schumann that we're going to pass the ball every play. And Ty Simpson could have tried to throw the ball every single play. And they still would have had 3 more yards of rushing yards this game. Obviously, this stat is this low because of the minus 28 yards caused by sacks and terrible scrambles by Ty Simpson. So I want to move there next, actually. So 3 sacks, 4 tackles for losses, 4 pass deflections. UGA's defense, not the same crew that came out the first time in Athens. UGA defense had Ty Simpson in a blender. This is what UGA did differently, Aaron. This time they pressured him, plain and simple. I'm sure there's more schematic stuff going on. To me, as a casual viewer of football, they pressured him. Clearly, this was not UGA's forte earlier in the season, not just with Alabama, but with other teams. Over their last 4 games, over the last 4 games leading into the SEC championship, the UGA Bulldogs, they've been averaging 2.25 sacks per game. For the last 4 games. The first 8 games before that, they were only 1.14 sacks per game. So they cranked it up an entire sack more per game over the last 4 games. And in this game, they got even another one, so they were at 3. This late season surge in pressure is exactly why they were able to shut down Alabama for the SEC title and earn that CFP bye spot. So that was Ty Simpson's woes. Gunnar Stockton, on the other hand, he completed 77% of his passes, 3 touchdowns. He didn't have a lot of yards, only 156, but I would say he didn't need them, but he also couldn't get them. Special teams and defense had them starting in Alabama territory 4 drives. 4 out of 12 of their drives started on the Alabama half of the field. They scored 21 of their 28 points on those drives. You're not going to get many yards if you've got a short field. So shout out to Cole Spear for the block punt there to set the tone early about what UGA came to Atlanta to do. They completely rolled the Tide's offense into a non-factor and then capitalized it by scoring touchdowns. So, UGA will now play the winner of the Tulane Ole Miss game. So I'm thinking it'll probably be a rematch between UGA and Ole Miss. And Alabama, they've got their rematch in the first round at Oklahoma. And then if they're able to win that, now they got to go play Indiana, the number 1 team in the nation. So yeah, if anything, the SEC championship kind of coordinated some ranking, some seeding and who will play who, obviously, in the next round. So cool. Other than that, pretty much the same there for the SEC. For those 2 teams, rankings wise. All right, moving on to the ACC. Duke 27, UVA, Virginia 20 in overtime. Honestly, this might have been the biggest surprise of the weekend for me here. The first ACC title for since 1989 for the Blue Devils here. I created a new stat for this game. It's called the CCPG rating. It was really high here. The chaos created per game. I'll get into that a little bit later. This game played in Charlotte. Manny Diaz, head coach for the Duke Blue Devils, really scripted a first half masterpiece. I mean, that opening drive was an incredible 15 plays, 75 yards, 9.5 minutes off the clock for a touchdown. Duke came into this a severe underdog. I've been talking about time of possession and controlling the clock for every game that I've covered earlier today. They were able to do it, right? Their second scoring drive was nearly as long as that first one that I mentioned. 13 plays, another 75 yards, lasted 8 minutes. So these 2 drives alone is 17 minutes over two drives over a quarter. It set the record for the 2 longest scoring drives by time in ACC championship game history, and it really allowed Duke to just control this game and make the Virginia Cavaliers play more so on their terms. UVA, they knew they had the auto bid for the CFP with a win here, and maybe that got into their heads a little bit. Looked a little too far ahead than they should have. They had a good game here. I mean, balanced attack. They had more yards than Duke. But obviously, the two interceptions, including the one in overtime that ended the game, paired with that huge disparity in time of possession, really just erased all the leverage that they had over 7-5 Duke. So I agree with the CFP's decision, honestly, to not let Duke into the playoffs. They didn't earn it in the regular season. I don't particularly care that they won their conference, but that allowed Miami to get in. So that's with all the confusion and who should get in and who should jump over who. That's why I mentioned the high chaos rating there. So in any case, that's championship, conference championship weekend. That is how the CFP bracket breaks down and what we will see over the next month or so. In the college football playoffs. Very excited to cover these games more in depth. We're going to have a lot of time to do so. The next game, I believe, is December 20th. So we've got a few weeks before the next game. So Aaron and I will be back later this week. We'll start breaking these games down one by one. We might do an episode each since there's so much to talk about. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you in the next episode. Thanks.